Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you let them hold your life in their hands? I did. And he dropped me on the cold hospital floor when I needed him most. My name is Emma, and 3 years ago, the man I loved, the man I was going to marry, walked out of a hospital room while I was fighting for my life. No goodbye. No explanation. Just the sound of his footsteps getting quieter down the hallway while machines beeped around me and my mother sobbed in the corner. Let me paint you the picture of who I was before that day. 26 years old, working as a graphic designer in Portland, Oregon. I had this tiny apartment in the Pearl District with windows that caught the morning light just right. My boyfriend, Jason Miller, was everything I thought I wanted: tall, confident, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and make everyone notice. We'd been together for 4 years. For years of Sunday morning pancakes, late-night drives along the Columbia River, talking about our future like it was this beautiful, certain thing. Jason worked in tech sales. Made good money. Always dressed sharp. My friends loved him. My mom adored him. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when he looked at you. I remember the exact feeling of his hand on the small of my back when we'd walk into restaurants, possessive, protective. I felt safe. But there were signs I ignored. The way he'd get quiet when I talked about my career goals. How he'd change the subject when I mentioned wanting to go back to school. Small things. Things I told myself didn't matter because he loved me, right? He said he loved me every single day. It was a Tuesday in November when everything shattered. I'd been feeling off for weeks, exhausted, dizzy spells, this weird pressure in my chest I kept dismissing as stress. Jason had been distant, working late more often, but I figured it was just a busy season at work. That morning, I woke up and couldn't breathe properly. The room was spinning. I called out for Jason, but he'd already left for the office early. I managed to call 911. The paramedics found me on the bathroom floor, semi-conscious. They told me later my blood pressure had dropped dangerously low. Something was very wrong. At the hospital, they rushed me through a series of tests. I remember the fluorescent lights above me, too bright, too cold. The smell of antiseptic burning my nose. A doctor with kind eyes telling me they needed to run more tests, that they'd found something concerning. I was terrified. I called Jason 6 times. 6 times before he finally answered. "Babe, I'm in a meeting," he said, his voice tight with annoyance. "I'm in the hospital," I whispered, my throat dry. "Jason, I'm scared. They don't know what's wrong with me. Can you come?" Silence. Then, "Which hospital?" "Providence Portland Medical Center." "Please hurry." He showed up 2 hours later. By then, my mom had already driven in from Eugene, her face pale with worry. Jason walked in wearing his work suit, checking his phone. He barely looked at me. "What happened?" he asked, not moving closer to the bed. I tried to explain the dizziness, the tests, the doctor saying they found an abnormality they needed to investigate further. As I talked, I watched his face. It wasn't concern I saw there. It was inconvenience. Like I'd ruined his day. The doctor came in then, Dr. Sarah Chin. I'll never forget her name. She had this gentle way of delivering bad news, but even her kindness couldn't soften the words. There was a mess. They needed to do a biopsy. Possibly surgery. The word tumor hung in the air like smoke. My mom grabbed my hand. I looked at Jason, waiting for him to move, to hold me, to tell me it would be okay. He stepped backward. "I need some air," he muttered, and walked out. He didn't come back that night. Or the next morning. My mom slept in the chair beside my hospital bed while I underwent more tests, while nurses came and went, while I cried so hard I thought I'd break apart. Jason's phone went straight to voicemail. His text responses got shorter and shorter until they stopped completely. On the 3rd day, when Dr. Chin came in to discuss surgery options, Jason finally sent a message. "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I need to focus on my career right now. This is too much." 32 words. That's what 4 years of love was worth to him. 32 words sent by a text while I was waiting to find out if I'd live or die. And then I discovered something that made it all so much worse. Let me take you back to how we actually started, because you need to understand what I gave up for this man. Emma had met Jason at a coffee shop in downtown Portland 4 years earlier. She was there working on a freelance project, laptop open, earbuds in, completely absorbed. He'd walked up to her table with that confident smile and said, "You've been nursing that cold brew for 3 hours. Let me buy you a fresh one." She should have said no. She had a deadline. But something about his certainty was magnetic. Their first date was at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. He told her about his plans, VP by 35, a house in the West Hills, early retirement. Big dreams. She told him about hers too, opening her own design studio, traveling to Japan for inspiration, maybe teaching someday. "That's cute," he'd said, and she'd felt something small twist in her chest. But he'd followed it with, "I mean, you're talented. You could really go somewhere." The first year was good. Great, even. He'd show up at her apartment with takeout after she'd worked late. They'd drive to Cannon Beach on weekends, walk along the shore, talk about everything and nothing. He made her laugh. He made her feel desired. But slowly, things started changing. "Do you really need to take that freelance project?" he'd ask. "You're exhausted all the time. Maybe focus on your full-time job. Why do you want to go back to school? You already have a degree. That's just more debt we'd have to deal with." He always said we when talking about her limitations, but I when talking about his ambitions. Emma started making herself smaller. She turned down opportunities that required travel. She stopped mentioning her dreams in conversations with their friends. When they'd go out with his coworkers, she'd smile and nod while they talked about stock options and quarterly earnings, feeling like a decoration beside him. Her best friend, Rachel, had pulled her aside at a barbecue once. Are you happy? Like, really happy? Because you don't seem like yourself anymore." "I'm fine," Emma had said, too quickly. "Jason's just stressed with work. It'll get better." But it didn't get better. It got worse. The fight started over small things, dishes in the sink, plans made without consulting him, her wanting to visit her mom for a weekend. He never yelled. That was the thing. Jason never raised his voice. He just got cold, distant. Would give her the silent treatment for days until she apologized for whatever she'd done wrong. "I just don't understand why you can't think about us," he'd say, his voice even and calm. "Everything you do affects me too. We're a team, Emma. Teams communicate." She'd apologize. Always. Because losing him felt worse than losing herself. The night before she ended up in the hospital, they'd had another fight. She'd been offered a promotion at her design firm, senior designer, more creative control, better pay. She was excited. She'd made Jason's favorite dinner, opened a bottle of wine, told him the news with this hopeful smile. He'd set down his fork. "When were you planning to tell me this would mean longer hours? It won't be that much more. You're already barely home. Now you want to take on more responsibility? What about when we have kids? What about our life?" "Jason, this is my career. This is important to me." His jaw had tightened. "You know what? Do whatever you want, Emma. You always do anyway." He'd left. Stayed at a friend's place that night. She'd cleaned up dinner alone, crying over the sink, wondering why achieving something felt like a betrayal. The next morning, she'd woken up dizzy. And then everything spiraled. Now, lying in that hospital bed, Emma understood something she'd been refusing to see. Jason had never loved her. He'd loved the version of her that served him, the quiet girlfriend who didn't ask for too much, who made him look good, who'd eventually give up her own dreams to support his. The moment she needed him, the moment she couldn't be that perfect accessory anymore, he disappeared. Her mom held her hand while the nurses prepped her for the biopsy. "You're going to be okay, baby," she whispered. "You're stronger than you know." But Emma didn't feel strong. She felt abandoned, broken, used. She kept checking her phone, even though she knew he wouldn't call. Some part of her, the part that had loved him desperately, still hoped he'd come back. Still thought maybe this was a mistake, a panic response, something he'd regret. And I thought that was the worst pain I'd ever feel, being left alone when I was most vulnerable, most afraid, most in need of love. I had no idea what was coming next. The surgery was scheduled for a Friday morning. Emma spent the days leading up to it in a fog of fear and medication. The tumor was on her ovary, potentially cancerous, they said. They wouldn't know until they opened her up. The word hysterectomy had been mentioned. At 26, she might lose the ability to have children. She tried calling Jason one more time. Thursday night, 11:47 p.m. She stared at his contact photo, them at Multnomah Falls, his arm around her, both smiling like they had forever. Her finger hovered over the call button. It rang 4 times. Then his voice, groggy and annoyed. "Emma, it's almost midnight." "I have surgery tomorrow," she said, her voice breaking. "Jason, they might have to remove. I can't do this right now. I have an early client meeting. Please. I just need to hear that you." "Emma, stop. We're done. You need to accept that and move on. This guilt trip thing isn't going to work." The line went dead. She sat there in the dark hospital room, phone clutched in her hand, and something inside her cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like ice on a frozen lake, that sound before everything collapses. Her mom had gone home to shower and grab fresh clothes. Emma was alone with the machines and the darkness and the crushing weight of abandonment. She pulled her knees to her chest, careful of the 4 line, and sobbed until a night nurse came in. "Honey, what's wrong?" Nurse Patricia asked, her voice heavy with concern. "Are you in pain?" "My boyfriend left me," Emma whispered. He left." Patricia sat on the edge of the bed. She was older, maybe 60, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "The surgery?" Emma nodded. "Let me tell you something," Patricia said quietly. "In 30 years of nursing, I've seen this more times than I can count. When people get sick, really sick, that's when you find out who actually loves you. It's not the person you thought would stay. It's the person who shows up at 3 a.m. when you're throwing up from chemo. Who holds your hand during the bad news? Who doesn't flinch?" He said I was guilt-tripping him. Patricia's expression hardened. "No, baby. You were asking for basic human decency. There's a difference." But Emma couldn't stop the spiral. She kept replaying every moment, searching for where she'd failed. Maybe if she'd been less needy. Maybe if she'd handled the news better. Maybe if she'd been prettier, more fun, less complicated. The surgery went longer than expected, 5 hours instead of 3. When Emma woke up in recovery, groggy and disoriented, the first thing she saw was her mom's face. And Rachel. And her younger sister, Sophie, who'd driven up from Sacramento. The tumor was benign, her mom said, crying with relief. "They got it all. You still have your ovary. You're okay, baby. You're okay." Emma should have felt relief. Joy. Instead, she felt hollow. Because the first thought that crossed her mind was, "I need to tell Jason." And then reality crashed back. There was no Jason. Not anymore. The days after surgery were brutal. Not just physically, though the pain was excruciating, but emotionally. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. Every time the hospital room door opened, some desperate part of her hoped it would be him, apologizing, realizing he'd made a mistake. It never was. Rachel stayed with her the most. She'd bring magazines, try to make her laugh, hold her when she cried. But one afternoon, Rachel's patience snapped. You need to stop waiting for him." "I'm not." "Yes, you are. You check your phone every 5 minutes. You jump at every sound. He's not coming. And you know what? Good. Because he's a coward and you deserve so much better." "You don't understand," Emma said, her voice raw. "I gave him everything. For years. I changed my whole life for him. I made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. And the second I needed him, he just vanished." "What does that say about me?" "It says nothing about you." Rachel's voice cracked. "It says everything about him. Emma, he's a narcissist. He never loved you. He loved having you." The words hit like a slap. Because deep down, Emma knew it was true. She'd known for a while. But admitting it meant admitting she'd wasted 4 years on someone who saw her as an accessory, not a person. 2 weeks after surgery, Emma was home from the hospital, recovering on her couch. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Melissa. Jason's coworker. I thought you should know he's been seeing someone. Started a week before your surgery. I'm sorry. You deserved better than finding out this way." Attached was a photo. Jason at a bar, his arm around a blonde woman, both of them laughing. The timestamp, the night before Emma's surgery. While she'd been terrified and alone in a hospital room, he'd been on a date. Emma stared at that photo until her vision blurred. The betrayal wasn't just that he'd left. It was that he'd already replaced her. That she'd been so easy to discard. That she'd meant so little. And it was in that moment, sitting alone in her apartment with surgical scars still healing, that everything changed. Emma stared at that photo for 20 minutes. Then she did something she hadn't done in 4 years. She got angry. Not sad. Not heartbroken. Angry. She called Rachel. "I need you to come over. Now." When Rachel arrived 30 minutes later, she found Emma at her kitchen table, laptop open, eyes red but jaw set with determination. "What's going on?" Rachel asked carefully. Emma turned the laptop around, showing her the photo. "He was cheating on me. While I was in the hospital, waiting to find out if I had cancer, he was starting a relationship with someone else." Rachel's face went white, then red. "That absolute piece of—" "I need you to help me do something," Emma interrupted. "I need you to help me get every single thing of his out of my apartment. Tonight. I don't want to see his face, hear his voice, or think about him ever again. Can you do that?" Rachel's expression shifted from anger to something like pride. "Hell yes, I can." They spent the next 3 hours purging. Every gift Jason had given her, the necklace he'd bought for her birthday, the framed photo from their trip to Seattle, the hoodie she used to sleep in that still smelled like his cologne. Everything went into boxes. Emma moved slowly, still sore from surgery, but she didn't stop. "You sure about this?" Rachel asked, holding up a sweater Emma had loved. "He gave it to me for Christmas 2 years ago," Emma said flatly. 2 years ago, while he was already making me feel guilty for having my own dreams. "Yeah, I'm sure." They loaded everything into Rachel's car. Rachel would drop it at Jason's apartment building, leave it with the doorman, no note, no explanation. Emma didn't owe him closure. But before Rachel left, Emma sat down and did something else. She opened a new document on her laptop and started writing. Every moment she'd felt small. Every time he dismissed her feelings. Every instance where she'd apologized for taking up space. She wrote it all down not for him, but for herself. Evidence. Proof that she hadn't been crazy, hadn't been too much, hadn't been the problem. At the top of the document, she typed, "Things I will never accept again. Being made to feel guilty for my success. Someone who gives me the silent treatment instead of communicating. A partner who sees my dreams as obstacles to their own. Anyone who makes me choose between myself and them. Being abandoned when I'm vulnerable." She saved it, printed it, taped it to her bathroom mirror where she'd see it every single day. The next morning, Jason called. Emma stared at his name on her screen, feeling her heart race, but this time, it wasn't hope. It was rage. She answered. Said nothing. "Emma?" His voice was cautious. "Look, I heard you've been telling people things. Making me look bad. That's not cool." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Making you look bad? Jason, you abandoned your girlfriend in the hospital. You don't need my help looking bad. It wasn't like that. You're being dramatic. I just needed space to think." "You needed space to start dating someone else?" Silence. "Then, who told you that? Does it matter? You're a coward, Jason. And the worst part? I wasted 4 years trying to be small enough for you to love. But you don't know how to love anyone. You only know how to use people. Emma, come on. Don't be like this. We can talk about. I will never let anyone make me feel worthless again." The words came out steady, powerful. She felt them settle into her bones. "You're overreacting," he said, his tone shifting to that familiar condescension. "You're emotional because of the surgery. When you calm down." "I am calm," Emma said. "Calmer than I've been in years, actually. Because I finally see you clearly. You're not the man I thought you were. You're not even a man at all. You're a coward who preys on women who love you more than you deserve. And I'm done. Don't call me again. Don't text me. Don't show up at my apartment. We're done. Permanently. You're going to regret this when." She hung up. Blocked his number. Blocked him on every social media platform. deleted every photo, every text thread, every trace of him from her phone. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she could breathe. Rachel came back over that afternoon, found Emma on her couch, staring at the ceiling. "You okay?" Rachel asked softly. "No," Emma said honestly. "I'm not okay. I'm angry and hurt, and I feel like I wasted the best years of my 20s on someone who saw me as disposable. But I'm also free. For the first time in 4 years, I don't have to shrink myself. I don't have to apologize for existing. I'm free." Rachel sat beside her. "So what now?" Emma sat up slowly, wincing at the pull of her incision. Now I figure out who I am without him. Now I build a life that's actually mine. Now I never, ever settle for less than I deserve again." She meant every word. The hard part was going to be keeping that promise. The first month after cutting Jason out was excruciating. Not because Emma missed him, though some nights, in the dark, a twisted part of her did miss the familiarity of having someone, even someone toxic. It was excruciating because she had to face herself. All the parts she'd buried to make room for him. Recovery from surgery was slow. Emma spent most of January on her couch, working remotely when she had the energy, sleeping when she didn't. Her apartment felt different now, emptier without his things, but also lighter. Like she could finally breathe without someone watching, judging, keeping score. Her mom visited every weekend, bringing homemade soup and old photo albums. "Look at you here," she'd say, pointing to a picture of Emma at 22, before Jason. "You were so bright. So full of life. I want you to find that again, baby." Emma would stare at that younger version of herself, smiling, confident, unbroken, and wonder if she could ever get back there. By February, she was cleared to return to the office. Walking back into that building felt surreal. Her coworkers welcomed her with cards and flowers, asked carefully about her health. Nobody mentioned Jason, though she knew they'd heard. Portland's design community was small. Word traveled. Her boss, Linda, called her into her office on the first day back. "The senior designer position is still open," she said. "If you still want it." Emma felt that old fear creep in, the voice that sounded suspiciously like Jason, saying it was too much, too ambitious, too selfish. She pushed it down. "I want it," she said. "Good. You start next Monday. And Emma? I'm glad you're back. We missed you." That night, Emma ordered Thai food, her favorite, the spicy kind Jason always complained about, and ate it alone in her apartment. She put on music he'd hated, loud and chaotic. She let herself take up space. It felt strange. Foreign. But also good. Rachel dragged her out to a gallery opening in March. Emma didn't want to go. She felt raw, exposed, like everyone could see the word abandoned written across her forehead. But Rachel was insistent. "You need to remember there's a world outside your apartment," she'd said. "And you need to remember you're still you." At the gallery, Emma stood in front of a painting, abstract, violent splashes of red and black that somehow resolved into something beautiful. An older woman beside her smiled. "Powerful, isn't it? The artist painted this after a divorce. She said she had to destroy the old version of herself to find the real one underneath." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Yeah," she whispered. "I get that." She started therapy in April. Dr. Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't let Emma hide behind polite explanations. "You keep saying you let him treat you that way," Dr. Morrison said during their third session. "Like it was your fault." But abuse, and yes, Emma, what you described was emotional abuse, is never the victim's fault. I should have seen it earlier. I should have left. Should have. You use that phrase a lot. Should have been stronger. Should have known better. Should have left sooner. When do you get to stop punishing yourself for being human? The question hit Emma like cold water. When did she get to stop punishing herself? She didn't have an answer. But slowly, incrementally, things started shifting. Emma took the senior designer role and discovered she was good at it, really good. She led a rebranding project for a local brewery that got featured in a design magazine. Colleagues started coming to her for advice. She mentored a junior designer, saw herself in the younger woman's eagerness and fear. She started running again, something she'd stopped doing because Jason said it made her too tired for him. At first, she could barely make it around the block without her surgical scars pulling. But by May, she was running 3 miles along the Willamette River, watching the sunrise, feeling her body grow strong again. She cut her hair, donated all her clothes that Jason had commented on. That skirt's too short, that color washes you out. Why don't you dress more feminine? She bought a leather jacket she loved. Started wearing red lipstick. Small rebellions that felt enormous. One Saturday morning in June, Emma woke up and realized she hadn't thought about Jason in 3 days. 3 entire days where he hadn't occupied space in her mind. She lay there in bed, sunlight streaming through her window, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness, not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, the scars still too tender. But peace. The quiet knowledge that she was going to be okay. That she was already okay, actually. That she'd survived the worst thing she could imagine and come out breathing. She made coffee, opened her laptop, and started sketching. A new project, something personal, a series exploring transformation, pain, rebirth. The kind of work she'd always wanted to make but had been too afraid to try. For the first time in months, Emma smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes. She was beginning to remember who she was. And she was starting to like her again. 6 months after surgery. 8 months since Jason had walked out of that hospital room. Emma stood in front of her bathroom mirror, looking at the woman staring back at her. She barely recognized herself, and that was a good thing. The personal art project she'd started became an obsession in the best way. Every evening after work, Emma would come home and paint. Canvases covered her apartment, visceral, honest depictions of pain transforming into power. A gallery owner named Marcus had seen her work at a local art walk in July and asked if she'd be interested in a small showing. "These are raw," he'd said, studying a piece she'd titled Abandonment. "People are going to feel uncomfortable looking at these. That's exactly why they need to see them." The show was scheduled for October. Emma felt terrified and alive in equal measure. At work, she was thriving. The brewery rebranding had led to 3 more clients. Linda promoted her to creative director in August, a position Emma had never even dreamed of asking for. She had a team now, an office with her name on the door. She was making more money than she ever had, and for the first time, she wasn't apologizing for her success. Her relationship with her body changed too. The surgical scar on her abdomen, the one she'd initially hated, seen as evidence of weakness, became something else. A reminder that she'd survived. That her body had fought and won. She stopped hiding it. When she went swimming, she wore a 2-piece. When people stared, she stared back. Running became meditation. 5 miles became 7, then 10. Emma signed up for a half marathon in September. The training was brutal, but there was something cleansing about pushing her body to its limits, proving to herself that she was capable of hard things. The day of the race, her mom, Rachel, and Sophie came to cheer her on. Emma crossed the finish line with tears streaming down her face, not from pain, but from pride. She'd done something Jason had once mocked as pointless and too hard for her. She'd done it anyway. She'd done it without him. "I'm so proud of you," her mom said, hugging her tight at the finish line. "Not just for this. For everything. For choosing yourself." Emma had started dating casually, nothing serious, just coffee dates, drinks after work. Learning what she actually liked in another person without someone telling her what to want. She went on a date with a software engineer named Alex who talked the entire time about cryptocurrency. She politely declined a second date. She went on a date with a teacher named Marcus who was kind but boring. Another polite decline. "Maybe I'm too picky now," she told Dr. Morrison during therapy. "Or maybe you finally have standards," Dr. Morrison replied. "There's a difference between being picky and knowing your worth." Emma met someone in September, a photographer named Liam who'd attended one of her art walks. He was quiet, thoughtful, asked questions instead of dominating conversations. They went on 3 dates. He was respectful, interesting, made her laugh. But on the 4th date, when he tried to kiss her, Emma felt herself freeze. "I'm sorry," she said, pulling back. I'm not ready for anything serious." Liam nodded, no anger in his expression. "That's okay. If you ever are, you know where to find me. But no pressure, Emma. You don't owe me anything." She almost cried. The casual kindness of it. The respect. The absence of manipulation or guilt. This was what normal looked like. This was what she'd been missing. By October, Emma had changed in ways that went beyond external success. She'd started saying no to projects that didn't align with her values, to friends who drained her energy, to expectations that didn't serve her. She'd stopped over-explaining herself, stopped apologizing for taking up space. She reconnected with old friends she'd lost touch with during the Jason years. Started going to yoga classes with Sophie. Had long phone calls with her mom where they talked about dreams, fears, the future. Rebuilt the relationships she'd neglected. The night before her art show, Emma stood in the gallery, looking at her work on the walls. 20 pieces. Each one a chapter of her story, the pain, the abandonment, the anger, the healing, the rebirth. It was vulnerable in a way that terrified her. But it was also honest. Marcus walked up beside her. "You ready for tomorrow?" Emma took a deep breath. "Yeah, I think I am. These are going to resonate with people," he said. "You're giving voice to something a lot of people feel but can't articulate. That's powerful." That night, lying in bed, Emma thought about who she'd been a year ago. That woman wouldn't recognize her now. That woman had been so desperate for love that she'd accepted crumbs. Had been so afraid of being alone that she'd stayed with someone who made her feel small. This woman, the one she was becoming, wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. Because she'd learned the difference between loneliness and solitude. Between being abandoned and choosing yourself. She still had bad days. Moments where the old wounds ached. Times when she caught herself checking Jason's social media before remembering she'd blocked him. Nights when she wondered if she'd ever trust someone completely again. But she was healing. Slowly. Imperfectly. But healing. And that was enough. The art show opened on a Friday night in October. Emma wore a black dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, elegant, confident, nothing like the clothes she used to wear to please Jason. The gallery was packed. Friends, colleagues, strangers who'd seen the promotional materials. People stood in front of her paintings, quiet, moved. Emma was talking to a potential buyer when she felt it, that prickling sensation on the back of her neck. The feeling of being watched. She turned. Jason stood in the doorway. Her breath caught. He looked different, thinner, tired around the eyes. He was alone. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the crowded gallery. Then he started walking toward her. Every instinct screamed at Emma to run. Her heart hammered. Her hands went cold. But she didn't move. She'd spent a year rebuilding herself. She wasn't going to crumble now. "Emma," Jason said when he reached her. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Can we talk? How did you know I was here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I saw it online. Your show. I had to come. I needed to see you." Rachel appeared at Emma's side immediately, protective. "You need to leave." Jason ignored her, his eyes locked on Emma. "Please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Emma looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the manipulation already forming in his expression. The practiced vulnerability. The same tactics he'd used for years to make her doubt herself, to make her think she was the problem. But this time, she saw through it. "Okay," she said calmly. 5 minutes. Outside. Rachel grabbed her arm. You don't have to. I know. But I want to." They walked outside to the street. The October air was crisp, cold. Emma crossed her arms, waiting. Jason ran his hand through his hair, that gesture she used to find endearing, now just transparent. "I made a mistake," he said. "The biggest mistake of my life. Walking away from you. I was scared, Emma. Scared of seeing you sick, scared of facing something real. I was a coward." Emma said nothing. "I've been miserable without you," he continued. "That girl, the one I was seeing? It didn't work out. None of them do. Because they're not you. I keep thinking about us, about what we had. What we had? Emma interrupted, her voice quiet but sharp. Jason, what exactly did we have? A relationship where I made myself smaller so you could feel bigger? Where I apologized for my success? Where you abandoned me in a hospital? I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But people make mistakes, right? People deserve second chances. I've changed, Emma. I'm in therapy now. I'm working on myself. She almost laughed at the audacity. You're in therapy. Yeah. And my therapist says, stop. Emma held up her hand. I don't care what your therapist says. I don't care that you're sorry. I don't care that you're miserable. Do you know why? Jason looked confused, like this wasn't going according to his script. Because for the first time in years, I'm happy, Emma said. Actually happy. I have a career I love. Friends who support me. A life that's mine. I spent a year rebuilding everything you tried to destroy. And you think you can just walk back in because you're ready? Because you decided I'm worth your time again. It wasn't like that. Yes, it was. It was exactly like that. You saw me as an accessory, Jason. Something pretty to have around until I became inconvenient. The second I needed you, the second I was vulnerable and scared and not perfectly put together, you disappeared. And you know what? Thank you. He blinked. What? Thank you for leaving. Because if you hadn't, I'd still be shrinking myself for you. I'd still be apologizing for existing. I'd still be waiting for you to love me the way I deserved. You walking out was the best thing that ever happened to me. Emma, come on. Don't be like this. We were good together. We could be good again. No. The word was firm, final. We were never good together. You were comfortable. I was convenient. That's not love. Jason's expression shifted, the vulnerability disappearing, replaced by something harder. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 4 years. You threw them away, Emma said. When you texted me, I can't do this while I was waiting for surgery. When you started dating someone else while I was still in the hospital. When you made it clear I was disposable. I'm not throwing anything away, Jason. There's nothing left to throw. You're going to regret this. When you're alone, when you remember what we had. I won't. Emma's voice was steady, certain. Because I'm not afraid of being alone anymore. I'm more afraid of being with someone who makes me feel alone. And that's what you did. Every single day. She turned to walk back inside. Emma, wait. She looked back one last time. Jason stood there under the streetlight, looking smaller somehow. Less significant. She'd spent so many nights imagining this moment, him coming back, apologizing, begging. In her imagination, it had felt devastating. Important. In reality, she just felt tired. Goodbye, Jason, she said. I really do hope you work on yourself. Not for me. For whoever comes next. Because they'll deserve better than what you gave me. She walked back into the gallery. Rachel met her at the door, eyes wide with concern. You okay? Emma took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline still coursing through her. But underneath that, she felt something else. Something solid and unshakable. Yeah, she said, and meant it. I really am. Let me tell you what I learned standing on that sidewalk, watching Jason walk away for the second and final time. I learned that closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from yourself. For months, I'd imagined that moment. Him coming back, apologizing, explaining. I thought I needed to hear him say he was wrong, that I mattered, that leaving me was the worst mistake of his life. I thought those words would heal something inside me. But standing there, listening to his rehearsed apology, I realized I didn't need anything from him. Not his validation. Not his regret. Not his version of events that somehow made him the victim of his own cruelty. I'd already healed myself. The art show that night was more successful than I could have imagined. People didn't just look at my paintings, they stood in front of them and cried. They told me their own stories of abandonment, of rebuilding, of learning to choose themselves. A woman in her 50s grabbed my hand and said, I needed to see this 20 years ago. But I'm seeing it now, and that matters. 3 pieces sold that night. Marcus told me a journalist from Portland Monthly wanted to interview me. But more than the professional success, more than the validation from strangers, what mattered was this. I'd taken my pain and transformed it into something that helped other people feel less alone. That was power Jason could never take from me. I went home that night exhausted but light. Sat on my couch with a glass of wine, still in my black dress, and just breathed. My phone buzzed, texts from friends, from my mom, from people who'd attended the show. All saying the same thing in different words. I'm proud of you. I was proud of me too. The next morning, I woke up and didn't check to see if Jason had tried to contact me. Didn't wonder what he was thinking, feeling, regretting. For the first time in a year, he was simply irrelevant. I made coffee, went for a run along the river. The October leaves were turning gold and red, falling into the water, being carried away by the current. I thought about how nature just lets things go. No resistance, no clinging, just release and renewal. You can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. That was something Dr. Morrison had told me months ago, and I finally understood it completely. I'd had to remove Jason from my life entirely, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. I'd had to stop waiting for him to validate my worth. I'd had to become my own source of love. Later that week, Liam texted me. Saw your show online. Incredible work. No pressure, but if you ever want to grab coffee as friends, I'd like that. I smiled. Texted back, coffee sounds good. As friends. We met on a Tuesday afternoon. He showed me his photography portfolio, beautiful, melancholic landscapes. We talked about art, about creating from pain, about the difference between loneliness and solitude. Can I ask you something? He said. That night you pulled away. When I tried to kiss you. Was it something I did? No, I said honestly. It was something someone else did. And I'm still learning how to trust again. How to let someone close without waiting for them to hurt me. He nodded. That's fair. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. Most people don't do the work you've done. They just carry their wounds into the next relationship and wonder why it fails. You can't love someone else properly until you love yourself first. Another truth I'd learned the hard way. I spent November settling into this new version of myself. The woman who didn't need external validation. Who could sit with discomfort without running from it. Who knew the difference between being alone and being lonely. I had coffee with my mom one Sunday morning at our favorite cafe in the Pearl District. She looked at me across the table and said, "You look like yourself again." No, you look like more than yourself. You look like who you were always meant to be. I felt tears prick my eyes. I feel like I lost 4 years. No, baby. You spent 4 years learning exactly what you don't want. That's not lost time. That's wisdom. She was right. Every painful moment with Jason had taught me something. About boundaries. About self-worth. About the difference between love and control. About how trauma doesn't define you, how you respond to it does. By December, I'd accepted that I might carry scars from this forever. That certain songs would still make me sad. That I might always have trust issues. That vulnerability would always feel scary. But I'd also accepted that I was stronger than I ever imagined. That I could survive the worst pain and come out breathing. That I deserved a love that didn't require me to shrink. The victory wasn't that Jason came back and I rejected him. The victory was that I'd built a life so full, so rich, so authentically mine, that his return barely registered as significant. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need him to understand what he'd done. I didn't need anything from him at all. I had myself. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. 2 years later, I'm sitting in my new apartment in the Alberta Arts District, bigger windows, better light, a whole room dedicated to my art studio. It's a rainy February afternoon in Portland, the kind where the sky is gray and heavy, but somehow beautiful. I have a cup of tea going cold on my desk while I work on a commission for a tech company downtown. Creative director work pays well, but it's the personal projects that keep my soul alive. So much has changed since that night at the gallery. So much has healed. The art show led to more shows. I've had 3 solo exhibitions now, one that traveled to Seattle and San Francisco. Critics call my work unflinchingly honest and a meditation on survival. I call it therapy I get paid for. My pieces hang in cafes, offices, a few private collections. I'm not famous, but I'm respected. More importantly, I'm fulfilled. Marcus, the gallery owner, not the boring date, became a real friend. He introduced me to other artists, and I found a community I didn't know I needed. We meet once a month, share works in progress, give each other honest feedback. These are people who understand that creating from pain isn't weakness, it's alchemy. Rachel got engaged last summer. I'm her maid of honor. We still have wine nights where we talk about everything and nothing, where she reminds me how far I've come when I forget. She's the kind of friend who measures your growth not in words, but in witnessed transformation. My mom and I talk twice a week now. Our relationship deepened through the crisis. She stopped treating me like a child who needed protection and started treating me like a woman who'd survived something hard. We're planning a trip to Japan together this spring, that dream I'd told Jason about years ago, the one he'd dismissed. We're finally doing it. Sophie finished her master's degree and moved to Portland. We live 10 minutes apart now. She comes over for Sunday dinners, and we cook together, laugh too loud, talk about relationships and careers, and the complicated work of building lives we're proud of. She tells me I inspire her. I tell her she inspires me right back. Work is good. Great, actually. I lead a team of 12 designers now. I mentor young women who remind me of who I was: talented but unsure, ambitious but apologetic. I tell them what I wish someone had told me: your career is not an inconvenience. Your dreams are not negotiable. Anyone who makes you feel small isn't worthy of your big love. I've dated since Jason. Nothing serious, nothing that made me want to risk my peace. A few months with a musician who was kind but transient. Some casual coffee dates that went nowhere. I'm not in a hurry. For the first time in my life, I'm not measuring my worth by whether someone wants me. Dr. Morrison and I still meet monthly, though it's less crisis management now and more maintenance. She reminds me that healing isn't linear. That I'll have bad days, triggers, moments where old wounds ache. But the difference is I know how to care for myself through them now. I saw Jason once, about 8 months ago, at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. He was with a woman young, pretty, laughing at something he said. I felt my stomach clench reflexively, that old muscle memory of pain. But then I looked closer. The woman had that certain posture I recognized. Shoulders slightly curved inward, laughing a little too eagerly at his jokes, making herself smaller. I felt sad for her. Hoped she'd figure it out faster than I did. Jason saw me too. Our eyes met across the cafe. I nodded once, acknowledgement, not invitation, and turned back to my laptop. I didn't wonder what he thought. Didn't care if he noticed I looked happy, successful, whole. His opinions stopped mattering the moment I started valuing my own. The surgical scar on my abdomen faded to a thin silver line. I touch it sometimes and remember that day, the terror, the abandonment, the breaking. But I also remember what came after. The rebuilding. The discovery that I was stronger than I knew. That I could survive the worst and still choose joy. Last month, I went on a date with someone new. His name is David. He's an environmental lawyer, thoughtful and funny, with kind eyes and no games. We've been on 5 dates. He asks questions and actually listens to the answers. He respects my boundaries. He makes plans and keeps them. He tells me I'm impressive, and when I deflect, he says, I'm not flattering you. I'm stating facts. It's terrifying. Letting someone in after everything. Trusting that someone can see me, really see me, and not run. But I'm trying. Carefully. With eyes wide open. Because here's what I learned. You can't let the person who broke you determine whether you ever let anyone in again. That gives them too much power. The real victory is staying soft even after the world tries to make you hard. I don't know if David is my forever. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. But I know I'm not settling. I know I'm not shrinking. I know I'm choosing someone who adds to my life instead of subtracting from it. And that's the difference. I'm not the woman Jason left in that hospital. I'm not even the woman who stood on that sidewalk 2 years ago, telling him goodbye. I'm someone new, someone I built from the rubble of who I used to be. Someone I actually like. Someone I'm proud to be. The rain picks up outside my window. I save my work file, stretch, look around my apartment. Art on the walls. Plants thriving. Books stacked everywhere. Evidence of a life being lived fully, messily, authentically. This is what healing looks like. Not perfect, not painless, but real. And that's why I wanted to tell you this story. If you've made it this far, thank you. Really, thank you for sitting with me through this story, through the pain and the healing and everything in between. I know it wasn't easy to hear. It wasn't easy to live either. But I told you this story for a reason. Because somewhere out there, someone is lying in a hospital bed right now, feeling abandoned. Someone is shrinking themselves to fit into a relationship that's too small for them. Someone is apologizing for taking up space, for having dreams, for needing love when it's inconvenient. And I need you to hear this. It's not your fault. You are not too much. You are not the problem. You deserve someone who shows up, especially when it's hard. For years, I thought being left meant I was unlovable. That if I'd just been prettier, quieter, less complicated, less needy, Jason would have stayed. I carried that shame like a weight around my neck. I let it define me. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. People who are capable of real love don't leave when things get difficult. They don't abandon you when you're vulnerable. They don't make you feel guilty for being human. Jason leaving wasn't evidence of my unworthiness. It was evidence of his inability to love beyond his own comfort. And once I understood that, really understood it, everything changed. I'm not going to tell you healing is easy. It's not. It's messy and nonlinear, and some days you'll take 10 steps backward. You'll have moments where you miss the person who hurt you, not because they were good for you, but because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. You'll doubt yourself. You'll wonder if you made the right choice. You'll check their social media at 2 in the morning and hate yourself for caring. That's normal. That's human. That's part of the process. But I promise, there will come a day when you wake up and they're not the first thing you think about. When you'll go hours, then days, then weeks without that weight in your chest. When you'll catch yourself laughing freely, creating boldly, living fully. When you'll realize you've built a life so beautiful, so authentically yours, that their absence isn't a loss anymore. It's just space. Space you filled with better things. The person who walked away from you made room for the person you're becoming. Never forget that. I think about the woman I was 3 years ago sometimes. The one who would have taken Jason back in a heartbeat. Who would have accepted his apology and convinced herself that love meant enduring pain. Who believed that being chosen was more important than choosing herself. I feel sad for her. But I'm also grateful to her. Because she survived. She did the hard work. She refused to let that abandonment be the end of her story. And now I'm here. Not perfect. Not healed completely, I don't know if anyone ever is. But whole. Strong. Free. Living a life I'm proud of. Surrounded by people who love me properly. Creating art that matters. Taking up space without apologizing. That hospital room doesn't define me anymore. Jason's betrayal doesn't define me. What defines me is what I did after. How I chose to rebuild. How I refused to let pain turn me bitter or closed off. How I learned to love myself first. If you're going through something similar right now, if you're in the darkness, wondering if it'll ever get better, please hear me, it will. Not immediately. Not easily. But it will. You are not broken. You're breaking open. And there's a difference. Keep going. Do the therapy. Feel the feelings. Cry when you need to. Get angry. You're allowed to be angry. Cut off people who don't serve you. Say no without explanation. Build boundaries. Take up space. Pursue your dreams with ferocity. Become so focused on your own growth that you forget to monitor their life. And one day, when they come back, because they often do, you'll look at them and feel nothing. Not love. Not hate. Just neutral. Like seeing a stranger who used to mean something. And that's when you'll know you've won. Not because you punished them, but because you freed yourself. So here's what I want from you if you've connected with this story. Comment below and tell me, what was the moment you chose yourself? Maybe you're still waiting for that moment. Maybe it happened yesterday. Maybe it was years ago. I want to hear your story. Because we heal in community. Because your voice matters. Because someone else needs to hear that they're not alone. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel seen, understood, or gave you hope, please hit that like button and subscribe. Not for me, but for everyone else who needs to hear this message. Let's build a community of people who refuse to shrink themselves for anyone. And finally, drop your suggestions in the comments for stories you want to hear next. What are you struggling with? What do you need to hear? What story needs to be told? Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the space to be vulnerable and honest and imperfectly human. You are worthy of love that doesn't require you to break yourself. You are worthy of relationships that add to your life instead of subtracting from it. You are worthy of peace, joy, fulfillment, and dreams that don't get dismissed. Don't let anyone, not an ex, not a family member, not society, not even yourself, convince you otherwise. Choose yourself. Even when it's scary. Even when it hurts. Even when everyone else thinks you're wrong. Choose yourself. I did. And it saved my life.